Consumed from 2024. Is this a psychological horror movie about how capitalism has gone mad and how the consumer is now the ultimate victim? No, this is a Monster in the Woods movie. So yes, Consumed from 2024. Okay, what's the story? It focuses on a married couple who are going for an extended hike in the woods, bit of camping, because the wife has recently got over cancer. And they've decided to try and, you know, go out in nature and enjoy life. The husband's a little bit overprotective because obviously his wife's been ill, but she feels a little bit kind of smothered because he's constantly kind of doting after her and things like this. However, that becomes the least of their problems when there seems to be some type of creature or entity in the woods in the form of some type of smoke monster, for lack of a better word. And that's not the only issue. There also seems to be a crazed lunatic living out in the forest who also may be a friend or foe. You have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss Consumed. Okay, so what works in this movie? So the movie, I have to say, started off pretty well. Our couple, I thought, seemed like a nice couple, if that makes sense. They seemed like a genuinely loving couple. I thought the performances seemed like they're quite sort of believable in their roles, and you know, you can kind of understand the animosity between them where the husband is overprotective because he knows his wife has been ill and kind of wants to sort of look after her. So you understand his point of view, but you also understand how this woman feels like she wants to kind of like push through on her own, and she feels a little smothered by, you know, her husband constantly trying to sort of undermine her, and that's how she feels. But they still obviously don't let that come between them and sort of try to move forward. So I kind of quite liked that sort of dynamic between them. There is obviously sort of history there and things, and we kind of get lots of kind of flashbacks about, to kind of give you more context in regards to the kind of the cancer and how it kind of made the wife feel on a kind of a psychological level. And it started some sort of fairly kind of gruesome, sort of trippy kind of flashback sort of style sequences. And then we have this kind of creature, and the creature's MO is it seems to want to skin its victims. And we see some quite gruesome scenes where they find skinned bodies, but also the kind of the skin like hanging up, done kind of realised kind of practically with some kind of some gruesome effect. So I kind of quite like the sort of like the practical gory effects here. The monster itself is not seen that much. We kind of see it whistle around. It seems to be quite unique in some ways, and the fact that it seems to be able to almost materialise and fly around in this kind of like ball of kind of glowing fire and smoke. So you don't really know what it is. Could it be some type of spirit? We do see a more of a practically realised version of the creature towards the end of the movie, albeit not for very long. And it's an interesting practical design, which I kind of quite liked, I have to say. Looks kind of freaky looking. But for the most part, we kind of see it in its kind of travel form, shall we call. And then Devon Sawa is our kind of crazed guy who's out in the woods. And he adds an extra kind of like wild card element to it where, you know, he could be a friend, he could be a foe, he could be both. And you know, you're never quite sure about what's kind of going on with him and, you know, what he's up to and stuff like that, and his motivations. And he's quite fun in the role, I've got to say. So it's a relatively small cast, so you feel like you do get to know, you know, the characters to a certain degree. Our husband, to be honest, ends up getting wounded, so he's unconscious for a good portion of the movie. So maybe you don't see as much as him, but our other two, we sort of feel like you kind of get a fairly good grasp of their personalities, so to say. The movie's kind of quite well filmed. I have to say that it makes use of these kind of like woods to give you a sense of isolation. And the characters don't seem completely stupid, which was kind of like, you know, nice and kind of refreshing here. And, you know, they have their kind of their layers, their secrets that some might be keeping from one another. And that kind of gets revealed through the movie. I would say the first half of this movie I was quite engaged with. And, you know, I wanted to see what was going on. This creature seemed like nothing that's kind of like seen before. It's theorised it could be a Wendigo, although it's never really kind of confirmed what it is, to be honest. But, you know, it possibly could be a Wendigo. But then the second half, or probably just past the second half mark, I would say. This to me is where the majority of the problems come in. But the one thing I would say within the first half of the movie is our sort of smoke monster. It seemed a little bit too out there for me, I have to say. Like a glowing ball of like plasma with smoke and fire coming off it. It's kind of whizzing round. I thought, well, I mean, this looks like some sort of science fiction thing, you know. What is that? You know, it's like nothing really that you've kind of seen, and then it's so like CGI looking and kind of like, you know, not really like any type of creature. It looks more like a sort of an effect, like magic. It looks like some sorcerers kind of like shooting a magic ball around. That's what it looks like. So I didn't think the effects were brilliant, and I have to say I didn't really like the idea of it. I think I would have preferred like a creature like jumping around in the trees or something. Although I guess it could be more generic. This is more original, I guess you would say, but it kind of looked a little bit too out there, a little bit too much of a departure what you would consider to be like a kind of creature. But you know, it is original, I'll give it that. But then let's talk about where to me the plot started to kind of somewhat unravel. So we end up in the Devon Sawa's character's kind of like camp. And the point where it started to go wrong for me is where our wife, Beth, finds like a little cubby hole in the ground and decides to go in there and find something in there. And I was like, I don't really, and then from there I started to not really understand the motivations of characters, and they seemed very like, I'm not quite sure how they've got to this point. It's all I don't want to spoil it for you, but characters just seem to be, their motivation seems to change, and secrets are revealed, and even though with a creature, when it comes to the creature, we like shortly after that we kind of, oh, there's a reveal that's kind of linked to Devon Sawa's character, and I was like, that just seems like convoluted and confused, and it started to lose me in regards to the plot, because it just seemed it wanted to try and have like that pull the rug out from under you moment, you know. Oh look, surprise! It's a twist, but it didn't really make any sense. And I was like, and then my interest started to wane a little bit, because, you know, we had more flashbacks. Okay, we get it. You know, she's had cancer, and we get it. And, you know, it wasn't good. Yeah. We don't need 20 flashbacks to showing us the same thing. And I understand that they want to kind of get home that she's survived and that horror, and it's still on her mind. And there's things that might, you know, have not been revealed fully. It was overdone though. And then, like I say, I just, characters like personalities, their motivations, people connected to them, it just became a little bit of a convoluted mess, to be honest. Which is a shame, because I thought, though I had some issues with some of the VFX, I thought the first half was actually fairly solid. And yeah, it ended up becoming a little bit of a messy movie. And then we kind of get the final confrontation. And again, I don't really get what it was trying to say, and what this kind of like, what is it trying to do? And like, why is this, you know, there's like other issues maybe with lighting, because there's sequences that are meant to be underground, yet it's kind of really well lit, and I guess we need to see what's going on, but you know, it's meant to be like underground and stuff. So, you know, it ended up being a relatively solid movie to start with, even though I just say I do have some problems with some of the VFX. And then we see this creature at the end, and it's you barely really see it for very long. It's such a shame because it was an interesting design, and I get they wanted a kind of like, you know, we'll say that big VFX moment towards the end, but maybe it could have been at least partially shown through. And it's really like the kind of the physiology of this thing is just like completely out there, and it's like it's just not enough. It's just like it just didn't quite work for me. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. I'm trying to be obviously vague with my critiques here because I do want to keep spoilers to a minimum, but there it is. 5 out of 10. It's a little bit of a shame really, this one, but it's not terrible. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.